My name is Amelia Brooks. I'm 36 years old and spent 7 years of my life working at Ashford Freight Solutions, a mid-sized logistics company based in Denver, Colorado. During that time, I didn't just build a career, I built a strong team where everyone knew they were respected and heard. We weathered the 2021 supply chain crisis together, handled the company's largest data migration without a single error, and achieved over 27% growth for 2 consecutive quarters. I used to believe that if I kept giving my best, my efforts would eventually be recognized. I was wrong. My father passed away suddenly on a March morning. He slipped while clearing snow from his driveway and hit his head on the frozen ground. I got the call from the hospital while I was in a meeting with the finance department about resource allocation for the Southwest region. I immediately asked to leave, informed my boss, Derek Hansen, the branch CEO, and sent in a request for 3 days of bereavement leave, attaching a note from the hospital. Derek's reply was short. Understood. Take care of your family first. I never expected that 3 days later, when I returned to the office, the first thing I'd see on my computer screen was an email with a cold subject line. Termination notice, effective immediately. I clicked on the email. My heart pounded as I read the first line. Amelia, please clear your desk and complete your exit paperwork with HR by 5 p.m. today. No words of sympathy. No meeting. Just a blunt paragraph, ending 7 years of dedication as if they had never happened. I had to reread it twice to make sure I wasn't imagining things. The reason was clearly stated in the attached file. Failure to ensure presence during critical operational phase. I gave a soft laugh. So, attending my father's funeral was considered an unacceptable absence? I looked around the office, where I had once stayed up all night with my team finishing the Carson project, where I had hung a group photo from our retreat in Aspen, a trip I had personally helped fund so everyone could go. Next to my monitor was a birthday card signed by every team member. Every detail reminded me of the years I had poured my heart into this job. No tears. No anger. I grabbed my phone, snapped a picture of the email, and sent it to my personal inbox. Then I shut down my computer, pulled a cardboard box from the cabinet, and began packing. It was a little after 8 in the morning, and the office was still quiet. I carefully wrapped the small, succulent plant, a Christmas gift from my team last year. As I was removing the photo from its frame, Kara, head of operations, walked in. Frowning. Amelia? What's going on? I just got fired, I said calmly, though the bitterness crept into my voice. What, because you took time off for your dad's funeral? Her voice cracked. That can't be. Derek approved it. I nodded. He changed his mind. Or maybe he never really meant it. I didn't blame Kara. She was in shock, while I had already begun to numb to the betrayal. I kept packing as other co-workers trickled in. Everyone was stunned. Some tried calling HR to verify. Jason, head of data analysis, slammed his hand on a desk. They're insane. Nobody understands regional management like you do. I stayed quiet. The company's actions spoke louder than any words. When Derek showed up, standing stiffly in front of me in his crisp suit, avoiding my eyes, I simply said, "You don't need to explain. I understood everything the moment I read that email." He pressed his lips together, as if he wanted to say something, but I turned away, not because I was weak, but because I knew. Sometimes silence says more than any accusation. I carried my box into HR, cradling the few remnants of my 7 years there. The office looked the same as usual, bright and humming, but somehow it felt unbearably cold. On a nearby desk sat a steaming coffee cup and a neatly stacked pile of documents, like nothing terrible had happened this morning. Amelia? Oh no! It's true? Cynthia Rhodes, the new HR specialist from Portland, spoke so softly it was barely a whisper. She looked at me with genuine sympathy. I placed the box down on a chair. I just need to finish the paperwork. Everything's clear now. Cynthia hesitated for a moment. I saw her glance toward the slightly open door before she whispered, "I found out this morning. You should know. This decision, it was never discussed in the executive meeting. It was just an email Derek sent out at 11 p.m. last night. No one knew beforehand." I nodded. I wasn't surprised. That's why I came early. At least I can walk out on my own terms, without security escorting me. Cynthia slid a folder across the desk. Termination form, confidentiality agreement, severance details. I skimmed it. They offered 2 weeks' pay and reminded me of a 4-month non-compete within a 250-mile radius. I raised an eyebrow. 4 months across the entire Western region? They really expect me to freeze my career over a personal vendetta? Cynthia sighed. Colorado law allows at-will termination. They're hiding behind that. But between us, you have a strong case. I didn't answer. Instead, I pulled out my phone, reopened the termination email, and placed it gently on the table. Cynthia leaned in. Her expression changed immediately. Oh my gosh. No formal documentation, no warning, no legal review, just this. I nodded. Which is why I'm not making a scene. Everything's already in my hands. Cynthia bit her lip. She scribbled something quickly on a small piece of paper and slid it to me. This is the number of a labor attorney who helped me back in Oregon. If you need... I took the slip of paper. I didn't say anything, but my look was enough to thank her. As I walked out of HR, a few employees were waiting quietly in the hallway. No words were exchanged, but the way Jason lightly squeezed my shoulder, the handwritten note Kelsey, the intern I once mentored, slipped into my hand saying, "You've inspired me more than anyone here," choked me up more than any farewell speech. I stepped outside. It was still cold, with fresh snow from the night before blanketing the ground. The glass revolving door reflected my image, carrying a box, walking away from a building I had once considered my second home. Now, it was just an office full of people I used to trust, and one man who'd destroyed everything. I placed the box on the passenger's seat and started the engine. My phone buzzed. A text from Jason. "This is the worst joke in company history. And Kelsey, if you need anything, just say the word." Followed by Brent from logistics. "Derek just called an emergency meeting. Someone from headquarters is here." I didn't reply. I kept my eyes straight ahead and gripped the steering wheel. I knew I wasn't going to look back, but I also knew this wasn't over. I wasn't going to sue. I didn't need to shout or post a long rant online. I was going to do exactly what my father once taught me. When you get pushed into the water, don't panic and thrash around. Take a deep breath, look around, and swim toward where you want to go. I still remembered how he'd taught me to stay strong against the current. And this time, I would use that lesson. On my own terms. That night, I sat alone in my small apartment on the south side of Denver, a cold cup of tea in my hand. I didn't yet know what my next step would be. But when my phone screen lit up, everything started to change. Caller ID. Nathan Caldwell. I blinked in disbelief. Nathan was the CEO of Stratosphere Logistics, one of Ashford's biggest competitors. We had first met at the Phoenix Supply Chain Conference nearly a year ago. I had been representing Ashford, presenting our team-developed regional analytics system. After the presentation, Nathan had shaken my hand and said, "If you ever get tired of your company, call me, before you call anyone else." At the time, I just laughed, thinking he was being overly polite. But now, seeing his name pop up on my screen, I felt my heart skip a beat. I tapped the answer button. "Amelia." His voice was deep and steady. "I just heard about what happened at Ashford. Word's been going around." I leaned back in my chair. News travels fast. "It's not gossip. It's outrage. No one can believe they would do that to the person who helped them secure the Pacific Steel contract last year." I stayed silent. Nathan continued. "I'm not calling to offer sympathy. I'm calling to offer you a job. I sat up straight. What do you mean? Stratosphere is expanding into the Western Mountain region. We need someone like you to lead the restructuring of our regional transportation network. The regional executive director position will open in 2 weeks, but if you agree, I'll expedite it. I took a deep breath. I'm under a non-compete agreement. Send me a scan, he replied without hesitation. My legal team will review it within 48 hours. If there's any risk, we'll back you up. Stratosphere doesn't abandon talented people over vague fine print. I looked out the window, where the snow was slowly melting under the streetlights. Maybe, for the first time in days, it felt like a new door had opened. The next morning, I met with Julian Ross, the labor attorney Cynthia had recommended. His office was on the 3rd floor of an old red brick building, but inside it was bright, spotless, and meticulously organized. Julian skimmed through the contract, frowning after less than 10 minutes. This clause is way too broad, he said, pointing to the line about no employment in the same industry within 250 miles for 4 months. They can't force you out of your career just because of a messy breakup. I need to be absolutely sure, I said. I won't let anyone use this clause to stop me from moving forward. Julian nodded. Ashford fired you without going through any disciplinary process, without documenting any violations. More importantly, they approved your leave, then used your absence against you. With these factors, it'll be hard for them to win if a dispute arises. I exhaled, feeling a sense of control for the first time in days. So, if I accept the new job at Stratosphere, you have a very strong chance of winning if they sue. But honestly, I doubt Ashford would risk dragging this into the open. That afternoon, I called Nathan back. I accept the offer, I said, but on one condition. Let's hear it. I want to build my own team. If any of my former colleagues apply, I want them to be fairly considered. There was a brief pause, then Nathan chuckled softly. Fair consideration? If they're as good as you, I don't need fair. I need them. Yesterday. I smiled. The feeling of being trusted again made me feel alive. When I signed the official job offer, a salary 35% higher, the authority to build my department, and a generous signing bonus, I knew a new chapter had truly begun. During my first week at Stratosphere Logistics, the energy in the office was electric. No fake politeness, no suspicious glances like back at Ashford. Here, people actually listened to one another. I had my own office, but I spent most of my time out in the open workspace, talking with the tech, dispatch, and operations teams, one by one. I wanted them to know I was more than just a name in an email. Yet, while I was settling into my new environment, messages from the old team kept flooding my phone. Jason, who used to manage the data systems for me at Ashford, texted, Amelia, everything's falling apart. They can't find your updated shipping route plans. Derek's scrambling to hold on to clients but doesn't even know where to start. Then Kelsey, Wilson Group just sent a letter postponing their contract signing. They said they want to wait for the former point person to return. I didn't respond immediately. Part of me felt sympathy for the old team, but another part saw the truth clearly. Ashford's losses weren't because I left. It was because of how they treated people like me. 3 days later, I met with Jason and Kelsey at a cafe downtown. They sat across from me, their eyes full of a mix of disappointment and determination. You were right, Jason began. Right after you left, Derek tried to force someone new into your role to keep Wilson, but nobody in the team would cooperate. Kelsey nodded. No one understands the system you built. They thought an Excel sheet was enough to run an entire shipping line. I leaned back. Have you both thought this through? If you leave, there's no going back. We don't want to go back, Jason said without hesitation. We want to go with someone we trust. I looked at them for a long moment. They didn't say it out loud, but I knew there were more who felt the same. Sure enough, within 2 weeks, 4 more members from my old Ashford team handed in their resignations. Each one left a polite but clear thank you email. They no longer trusted the current management. Ashford panicked. Monday morning, while I was in a finance meeting at Stratosphere, I received a strange email from Olivia Chambers, the deputy HR director at Ashford. Someone who had barely spoken to me before. Subject: urgent. Regarding the Northwest regional team situation, the body of the email was simple but tense. We would like to discuss the recent wave of core staff departures. This situation is severely impacting performance and strategic partner trust. I replied with a single line. Perhaps your company should reconsider how you treated the person who built that team. Later that afternoon, Jason sent me a screenshot of Ashford's internal system. The automated dispatch system had crashed, and they were forced to delay shipments to 3 major clients. The next day, I heard that Henderson Manufacturing, one of the clients I had cultivated, had officially terminated their contract. They didn't specify the reason, just noted instability in management. Day by day, Ashford seemed to spiral into an uncontrollable crisis. I didn't feel happy, not even a little. Instead, I felt justice was quietly being restored. That weekend, after my old team officially became Stratosphere employees, I hosted a small dinner at my home. No wine, no speeches, just laughter, relief, and a sense of freedom after years of being under pressure. Jason raised his soda glass and smiled. We lost an old house, but we found ourselves again. I looked around the table. They weren't just followers. They were people brave enough to leave a place that no longer valued them. I knew this time, I wasn't just leading a team. I was leading a transformation. That Monday morning, while reviewing a new route optimization plan for the Idaho region with the tech team, my phone rang. A strange number with a Denver area code. I answered. A calm, clear voice on the other end. Amelia, this is Marcia Givens, the new regional director at Ashford Freight Solution. I sat up straight. The name Marcia wasn't familiar. The person who previously held that role was Richard Flynn, someone notorious for dodging internal issues. Clearly, Ashford had gone through bigger changes than I thought. Hello, Miss Givens, I said steadily. How can I help you? First, she hesitated. I want to sincerely apologize on behalf of the new leadership for how your departure was handled. I've reviewed the entire situation, and honestly, I'm shocked. I stayed silent, not out of surprise. I had heard enough belated apologies in my life. We understand you have every reason not to want to hear this, Marcia continued. But I hope you'll consider an offer to return to Ashford. As Regional Executive Director for the Western Division, with a 20% salary increase and full authority to rebuild your team. I let out a short laugh, sharp enough to cut through the formal tone. Do you realize I had to pack my things and walk out of that building like a stranger, just because I did the right thing for my father's funeral? I heard a sigh from the other end. I know. I can't change what happened, but I can change what happens next. No, Miss Givens, I replied, my voice calm but firm. What I needed was kindness when I lost someone, not a job offer wrapped in money and titles just because Ashford is losing clients. She stayed silent. I continued. I'm not coming back to fix mistakes I didn't make. I've chosen a new path, one where the people who stood by me are valued, and I have no regrets. We're willing to raise the offer, Marcia said quickly. 30% salary increase, stock options, full authority over the 3-year strategic plan for the Western region. I glanced toward the conference room where Jason was presenting the results of the new delivery process restructuring in Spokane. I saw my former teammates, confident, heard, working without fear. This time, I answered firmly. It's not about the money, Marcia. It's about principles. After a long pause, she said slowly, I understand. But please know, the offer remains open. I hope someday Ashford truly understands why I left, I said. And if that day ever comes, it won't start with a negotiation call. It'll start with learning how to treat employees with compassion, not policies. After the call, I stepped out onto the 8th floor balcony. The morning sky was a brilliant blue, sunlight pouring through the windows, reflecting the start of something irreversible. I had closed the old door and had no reason to look back. Later that afternoon, I received a message from Barbara, the former HR staffer from Ashford who sat across from me the day they asked me to sign my termination papers. The message was short. Derek Hansen has been officially terminated. The board launched a full internal investigation. I read the words without feeling joy or surprise. It was simply confirmation of what I had believed from the beginning. Anything built on carelessness will eventually collapse because of it. That evening, our team gathered at a small Italian restaurant near the Stratosphere office. After appetizers, Jason pulled out a chocolate mousse cake with a message piped in fresh cream. To the leader, who chose integrity over ego. I didn't need to give a speech. I just smiled, looked at each person around the table, and said, "We didn't leave Ashford for revenge. We left to live according to the values we deserve." 3 months after I declined Ashford's offer, I was officially promoted to Executive Vice President for the Northwest region of Stratosphere Logistics. My new office was on the 12th floor, overlooking the Cascade Mountains, where the sunsets bathed the sky in gold. But what made me proud wasn't the view. It was the people building a stronger, more transparent, more human foundation with me. Jason became head of operations. Kelsey took over as regional supply chain supervisor. Brent, once quietly working behind the scenes, now led strategic analysis. None of them had flashy titles before, but when given the chance, they proved themselves more than any resume ever could. We worked tirelessly, not because we had to, but because we believed. This time, we were building something real. Under the leadership of our new team, Stratosphere not only retained major partners, but reclaimed 3 out of 4 core clients once loyal to Ashford, including Wilson Group, Henderson Manufacturing, and, most recently, Tidewell Equipment, a major player in the construction industry. At a quarterly meeting at Stratosphere's Seattle headquarters, CEO Nathan Caldwell announced a number that left the entire room silent. Northwest regional revenue is up 34% year-over-year, profit margins improved by 18%, and employee satisfaction is at its highest since Stratosphere was founded. He turned to me, smiling. "Amelia, your region isn't just leading, it's becoming the model for others to follow. Thank you for turning adversity into opportunity, not just for yourself, but for the entire system." I didn't say much, just gave a small nod, because I knew this wasn't just my victory. It was the voice of trust being rebuilt, day by day. A few weeks after the meeting, an article appeared in Logistics Today, a respected industry journal. The headline was short but telling. "And loyalty is not repaid? Stratosphere rises from a rival's mistakes?" The piece clearly documented the exodus of key personnel from Ashford and Stratosphere's remarkable rebound. No names were mentioned, but everyone in the industry knew exactly who and what it was about. That same day, Barbara, the former HR staffer, sent me a message. "I've never been prouder of you," I simply replied. "Thank you for that little slip of paper that day. It opened the path for me." Around the same time, Summit Edge, Ashford's parent company, announced the closure of 2 regional offices and its full withdrawal from the Idaho market. A wave of clients had shifted to competitors, citing management instability and poor staffing decisions. I didn't feel triumphant, but I did feel at peace. That night, our team celebrated in the office after landing a new contract with Cascade Materials, a client we had once lost back at Ashford. They came to us this time, not just for better prices or faster service, but because of something their CEO said at the signing. "We want to work with people who don't abandon each other when things get tough." I raised my glass of sparkling water, looking around at the familiar faces. Jason telling a story, Kelsey helping an intern pick a dessert, Brent still hunched over a laptop finalizing a report. They had changed. Or rather, they had returned to who they truly were. I stepped out onto the office balcony once more, taking a deep breath. The breeze was cool, but gentle. The lights from downtown reflected off the glass, a city seemingly waving back. I thought of my father. If he were alive, he would have asked me the same old question. Do you regret it, Amelia? And this time, I could smile and answer, no, Dad, not for a single second. One late November afternoon, right after wrapping up a virtual meeting with the Portland team, my phone rang. The caller ID was so familiar, I almost laughed. Barbara Kent, the former HR employee from Ashford, the one who quietly slipped me the labor attorney's number the morning I was forced out. He answered, Barbara, I was just about to call you after seeing the news this morning. Amelia. Her voice was slightly choked, but composed. I just wanted to tell you something. And to say thank you. About Summit Edge's acquisition? I asked directly. That news spread faster than flu season. Barbara chuckled softly. Yes, but that's not the only reason I'm calling. Then she hesitated. I left Ashford 2 weeks ago. Voluntarily. Not pushed out. And before I left, I retrieved something. It's small, but I think it belongs to you. The next day, when I arrived at my office, a small package was waiting on my desk, carefully wrapped in craft paper, with neat handwriting on the outside. A gift from an old place for a new one that's blooming. I opened it and froze. It was the little cactus, the one I had kept on my desk for 7 years at Ashford. The one I had wrapped in newspaper the morning I was fired. And then forgotten, too stunned to think of anything but my wounded pride. Now it had grown. New shoots stretched out, vibrant and green, a living sign of survival after months of abandonment. I placed it on the windowsill of my office, where there was sunlight, air, and me, someone who no longer bowed her head. That afternoon, an article from Business Northwest confirmed the inevitable. Summit Edge Freight Solutions had been acquired by Meridian Logistics for less than a third of its original valuation. The reason? Severe personnel crisis, loss of client trust, and violations in leave and internal management policies. I sat still for a few seconds, not from happiness, but from the feeling that the final door had truly closed. Dan Weaver's name also appeared in the investigation report, suspended for abuse of authority, violation of termination procedures, and failing to notify senior leadership of major staffing decisions. Barbara later texted me. I heard Dan's applying for unemployment. He claims he followed internal procedures, but can't explain what those procedures were. I didn't feel satisfaction. No bitterness, just a sense that a missing piece had finally clicked into place. That night, our team gathered at my house. Jason brought homemade lasagna he'd learned from an online cooking class. Kelsey brought hand-pressed fruit juice. Brent arrived late, still double-checking the latest data reports. Once everyone was settled, I placed the little cactus on the table. Recovered from an old place, I said. It was left behind the day I walked out of Ashford. But now, it survived. The room went silent for a few moments. Then Kelsey whispered, just like all of us. I looked around. These people, who had watched me walk out through a slammed door, were now sitting in my home, part of a journey I hadn't planned, but one that meant everything. I raised my glass to what we overcame, to what we are building, and most importantly, to choosing kindness, even when the world didn't offer it first. We clinked glasses. In the warm light, laughter filled the room, the perfect prelude to a brand new chapter. One early winter morning, I drove out of downtown Spokane toward a small lake called Clearwater, about an hour away. The sky was gray, the fog heavy, but I knew exactly where I was headed. The place where my father used to take me fishing every summer. Where he taught me the greatest lesson of my life. You don't win by stepping on others. You win by standing strong when others fall. I parked, pulled on a thick coat, and walked to the shore. The lake was clear and still like a mirror. It was the same old spot where I used to set up a tiny folding chair, where my father would tie fishing lines and sit quietly for hours. He never said much, but every action taught me. Move slowly, endure, and never bow to hardship. I sat down. No fishing rod this time, just a small notebook in hand. I opened the first page and reread the words I had written during my first meeting at Stratosphere. I didn't come here to replace anyone. I came to prove that a better workplace is possible, and it has to start with us. I smiled. At 36, I had been shoved out of my old company with a cold email, but from that moment, I had found the right path. I didn't destroy Ashford. They destroyed themselves by treating people carelessly. As for me, I simply walked forward, carrying determination and those who believed in me. At Stratosphere, we didn't measure loyalty by overtime hours. We measured it by how we supported each other in hard times. No one feared losing their job just for taking leave to care for family. When one of my employees, Hannah, lost her mother, the entire office wrote sympathy cards and chipped in to help with funeral costs. No policy mandated it. We just understood what it felt like to be left alone during the worst time. A few weeks ago, during an internal survey, the results made me tear up. 95% of employees believe management truly cares about them as people, not just as numbers. That wasn't just a statistic. It was the answer to everything. The breeze from the lake stirred the notebook pages. I caught them gently and laughed when I spotted a blank page near the end with a small note I had once written. Rebuild, not revenge. Yes. I didn't need to tear down Ashford to prove anything. Building something better, kinder, stronger was the loudest answer of all. No challenges, no attacks. Just results, undeniable and clear. I stood up and looked out over the lake again. There was no anger left. Only gratitude. Gratitude for not crumbling when hurt. Gratitude for my father, teaching me to stand like stone in the current. And gratitude that in a fast, harsh world I had kept my heart whole. I pulled out my phone and texted Jason. Schedule the next quarterly strategy meeting. And don't forget to include the new hires feedback session. I want to hear from them. He replied right away. Got it, boss. Oh, by the way, the Portland team just sent a photo. They hung up your picture in the common area. They're calling it The Builder. I laughed. That title didn't need a medal or a golden frame. It just needed a place. A place where people knew that when they walked in, they weren't seen as tools, but as part of something bigger. I glanced down at the watch my father left me, then turned back toward my car. On the drive back to the city, I didn't feel like a winner. I felt like someone who had stayed true. And that was enough. My story isn't about revenge. It's about standing up after being knocked down and choosing to rebuild with determination and kindness. I once walked away from a place that forgot the value of people. But from that wound, I created an environment where everyone is heard, valued, and never left alone in their most vulnerable moments. My greatest success isn't the title I earned. It's making others believe that kindness still has a place in this world. What do you think about Amelia's choice? Was she right to refuse to return? Or should she have given Ashford a chance to make things right? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt stories about family and life. I grew up in a family that from the outside seemed like the epitome of perfection. We lived in a grand mansion in one of the city's wealthiest neighborhoods, where tree-lined streets led to sprawling estates with gleaming black iron gates and meticulously manicured lawns. Our house had it all: a large swimming pool in the backyard, a private movie theater, and a garage spacious enough to accommodate my father's 3 luxury cars. My father, Andrew Callahan, was a successful entrepreneur who built his company from the ground up, turning it into a leading firm in the financial investment sector. He was the kind of man people respected: intelligent, decisive, and unwaveringly determined. My mother, Evelyn, was different. She never had to lift a finger, content with enjoying the wealth my father provided. To her, appearances mattered more than anything else. She was always dressed in expensive designer outfits, carrying the latest limited edition handbag she simply had to have because everyone in the elite women's club had one. I could count on one hand the number of times my mother truly spent time with me without being glued to her phone or engaged in conversations with her friends. My father loved me, but he was always busy with work. When I was little, most of my time was spent with a revolving door of nannies, each coming and going like a passing breeze. My mother was never satisfied with them, always finding a reason to fire them. There was only one person I truly bonded with: Linda. She was the only one who ever felt like real family. Linda didn't just watch over me. She read me bedtime stories, taught me how to bake cookies on weekends, and, most importantly, she listened. When my parents were too busy or simply didn't care, Linda was the one who held me close and told me I was special, that I deserved love just like any other child. But that joy didn't last long. One day, when I was 8, I walked into the living room and saw my mother standing with her arms crossed, glaring at Linda with a cold, hard expression. "I can't accept this," my mother said icily. "I saw you wearing a Cartier bracelet in the kitchen this morning. That's designer jewelry. Staff shouldn't be wearing things like that." Linda hesitated, then shook her head. "Mrs. Callahan, it was a birthday gift from my mother." "Really? Or did you take it from somewhere?" My mother tilted her head, eyes narrowing with suspicion. "I won't have household staff behaving like this." I froze. I knew Linda would never do such a thing, but it didn't matter. My mother had already made up her mind. The next morning, Linda was gone without a goodbye. I stood by the window, watching her walk to her car, feeling an empty hollowness settle inside me. As the years passed, I grew accustomed to not having anyone truly care about me aside from my father, but even he was increasingly consumed by work. I learned not to expect anything from my mother because every time I tried to get her attention, she would smile politely before shifting the conversation to her new dress or the upcoming cocktail party. Then, everything changed when I was 14. I remember that night vividly. My father came home later than usual, looking exhausted but still managing a smile as he walked through the door. I had noticed the dark circles under his eyes growing more pronounced in recent weeks. He had been working relentlessly on an important deal, doing everything he could to ensure it went smoothly. "Sweetheart, have you finished your homework?" he asked as he passed through the living room, where I was curled up on the couch. "Yes," I nodded. "Did you eat yet?" He gave me a tired smile. "I'll grab something later. I just have a few things to finish up first." But he never got the chance. That night, the shrill ring of the phone shattered the silence of our vast home. I heard my mother scream from the living room. I rushed down the stairs and found her clutching the phone, her hands shaking. "No! No! This can't be happening," she stammered before letting out a wail. It turned into a nightmare. My father had collapsed at his office, an unexpected heart attack. By the time the paramedics arrived, it was too late. He was gone. The funeral was a blur of somber faces and whispered condolences. I remember standing beside my mother, listening to her sob for the guests, but I could see something else in her eyes. Not the grief of a woman who had lost her husband, but the fear of losing the luxurious life she had grown accustomed to. That fear quickly became a reality. My mother decided to take over my father's company, convinced that she could easily run it like a true businesswoman. I couldn't believe my ears when she confidently told the senior staff, "Women have a better instinct for business than men." Within 6 months, everything unraveled. The experienced financial directors who had worked under my father began resigning. Profits plummeted, investments failed, and my mother continued to spend lavishly as if we were still living in our golden days. Eventually, the company spiraled into a financial crisis. The debts piled up, shareholders lost confidence, and in the end, the company was forced to sell at a fraction of its actual value. We lost everything. The mansion that had once been my mother's pride was also seized by the bank to pay off debts. I stood on the lawn, watching moving trucks haul away every piece of luxurious furniture, feeling as if a part of my life was being carried away with them. We moved into a small house in the suburbs. My mother couldn't accept the reality that she was no longer a high society lady. But for me, the worst was yet to come. I packed my bags and left right after high school graduation. I had applied to multiple universities, but deep down, I knew I would choose one as far away from my mother as possible. I needed distance. I needed a new life, free from her manipulation, free from her constant complaints and passive-aggressive remarks about my responsibilities toward her. I received my acceptance letter from Crestview University, a prestigious school in another state, more than a 2-hour flight from my old town. I didn't tell my mother about my decision until everything was set. When I finally told her I would be leaving in a week, she stared at me as if I had just said the most absurd thing in the world. "You're just going to leave me all alone?" my mother asked, her voice sharper than usual. "I'm not leaving you, Mom. I'm going to college," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "You could study somewhere nearby. Do you really need to run away like this?" I didn't answer, because the truth was, yes, I needed to leave. I needed to get out of her shadow and start over. Throughout my 4 years in college, my mother never called me first. Every time I reached out, her responses were always the same. Either complaints about her situation or guilt-tripping me for not fulfilling my duties as a daughter. "I have to pay all the bills myself now," she sighed during one of our rare phone calls. "There's no one to help me." I said nothing. I knew she was still receiving Social Security benefits and had some savings from selling the mansion, but for my mother, money was never enough. Ignoring her guilt trips, I focused on my studies. I couldn't afford to waste the opportunity I had fought so hard for. I worked harder than ever, dedicating all my time to my finance major. I knew that if I truly wanted to escape the cycle of my family, I needed a solid career. 4 years passed, and I graduated with honors. Within just a few weeks, I received a job offer from one of the most prestigious financial firms in the region. This job didn't just offer a dream salary, it also opened doors to career advancements I had never dared to imagine. Once I settled into my new job, I started thinking about my mother. Even though I knew she would never appreciate anything I did, I still felt responsible for helping her in some way. I decided to send her a fixed amount each month, $1,000, enough to cover her basic expenses. On top of that, I paid for some larger bills to ensure she had a stable life. At first, my mother didn't say much. She simply accepted the money I sent. But over time, I noticed a slight change in how she treated me. Her phone calls became less accusatory. Instead, she started inviting me out to dinner whenever I visited home. We chose small restaurants, places she never would have stepped into when she was wealthy. For the first time in years, I felt like we could actually talk without wealth and social status clouding our interactions. I thought that maybe over time, my mother had come to accept reality. But I was wrong. Her 55th birthday came as a complete surprise. I'd never received a formal invitation, just a short text from her. "Are you free Saturday night? I want to have a small dinner." I smiled when I read it. Though my mother had never been one to express gratitude, at least she wasn't making unreasonable demands. I assumed she simply wanted a small family gathering. That evening, as I stepped out of my car at the address she had sent, my heart sank. The restaurant in front of me was one of the most extravagant in the city. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, uniformed staff stood attentively at the entrance, and luxury cars filled the valet lot. I walked in, an uneasy feeling settling over me. When the host led me to the private dining area, I nearly couldn't believe my eyes. At least 30 people were scattered around elegantly draped tables. Not just family members, but also my mother's friends, people I had never met. They were all laughing, sipping expensive wine. My mother approached me, arms outstretched, beaming. "Jenna, I'm so happy you're here." I stood still, my breath growing heavy. "Mom, what is this?" "My birthday party," she said as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. I glanced around. Lavish dishes were being served, bottles of high-end wine glistened under the light. The only thing I could think about was the bill at the end of the night. "I booked everything in advance," my mother continued cheerfully. "You don't have to worry about a thing, just enjoy." A cold chill ran down my spine. "Did you tell me about this?" She frowned slightly. a hint of irritation crossing her face. "Jenna, don't make a big deal out of this. You're my daughter. You always pay for our dinners. What's the difference?" I looked at my mother for a long time, and for the first time in my life, I realized she had never changed. Even after losing everything, she was still the same person, the one who always assumed I was responsible for her, that my money was hers. I took a deep breath, reached into my purse, pulled out $200 and placed it on the table. "This is my share." My voice was strangely calm. "The rest is on you." The room suddenly fell into a tense silence. The guests around us stopped talking, their eyes filled with curiosity. My mother stared at me in shock. "Jenna, what are you saying?" "I'm not paying for this dinner," I stated clearly. "If you wanted to throw such a grand party, you should have told me beforehand. You can't just assume I'll cover everything." She stood frozen, then her expression shifted to anger. "You are so ungrateful," she nearly shouted. "After everything I've done for you?" I didn't respond. I simply turned around and walked out of the noisy dining room, leaving behind the murmurs and whispers. This time, I wasn't coming back. I returned to my hotel, locked the door, and collapsed onto the bed. I didn't turn on the lights. The only glow came from the city outside, the towering buildings shimmering in the night, as if whispering about the life-altering decision I was about to make. I picked up my phone, took a deep breath, and started typing the steps that would change everything. First, I opened my banking app and canceled the automatic $1,000 monthly transfer to my mother. I watched the confirmation screen, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. Next, I called the dealership where I had bought the Lexus for her 2 years ago. "Hello, this is Jenna Callahan. I need to reclaim a vehicle under my name. Can I arrange for a tow truck to pick it up within 24 hours? "Of course, Miss Callahan," the employee replied professionally. "We'll send a driver to retrieve it first thing in the morning." After that, I opened my browser and accessed the website of the internet provider I had subscribed to for my mother. With just 3 clicks, I canceled the service, cutting off the high-speed connection she had been using for the past 2 years. Finally, I opened my social media app and typed out a straightforward post. "Important announcement. As of today, I will no longer be providing financial support of any kind to my mother or any other family members. All previous arrangements have been terminated. Please do not contact me requesting money." I stared at the words for a moment, then pressed post. My phone buzzed instantly. Before I could read the first comment, I turned it off, tossed it aside, and curled up in the clean hotel sheets. That night, I slept better than I had in years. The next morning, when I turned my phone back on, a storm had erupted in my inbox. There were over 20 messages from my mother. The first few were filled with fury. "What the hell are you doing? Do you know how humiliated I was last night? Who do you think you are? How dare you cut me off? Who gave you the right to do this?" Then the messages turned more dramatic and guilt-ridden. "You're leaving me to starve. Do you have any idea how much I sacrificed for you?" When I didn't respond, she started begging. "Jenna, please, just 1 more month. Just $500. That's all I'm asking." I locked my phone, threw it into my bag, and left the hotel without hesitation. In the following days, my relatives came after me relentlessly. Aunt Karen texted, "Jenna, do you really think you can treat your mother like this? She raised you, and this is how you repay her?" Uncle Mark called, his voice dripping with disappointment. "Your father would be ashamed of you. I thought you were better than this." None of them asked how I was doing. No one cared about the years of manipulation, pressure, and unreasonable demands I had endured from my mother. They only cared about the money. I blocked all their numbers. My life changed immediately. Without the fixed monthly payments, I suddenly had financial freedom. I moved into a bigger apartment closer to the city center, where I could finally enjoy my own space. I booked a flight to Europe, spending my days traveling alone, exploring new places. I had never had the chance to before. No one could call me asking for money. No one could make me feel guilty for choosing to live my own life. 2 months later, my mother tried to reach out. She used a neighbor's phone to call me. When I answered, her voice was familiar, but this time, there was a hint of weakness. Jenna, I miss you, she said, as if nothing had ever happened. I'm sorry about the birthday party. I got carried away and didn't think it through. I stayed silent. That apology wasn't genuine. Can you help me out a little? She continued. I'm having trouble with this month's rent. Just this once, I promise I won't ask again. And that was the moment I knew she had never changed. I took a deep breath. Mom, I can't help you anymore. You have to take care of yourself. Jenna, you can't treat your mother this way. Her voice rose, filled with the familiar indignation. I am your mother. I paused, feeling lighter than ever. Then start acting like one. I hung up. This time, I felt no guilt. From that day forward, I never heard from my mother again. Occasionally, through friends or social media, I found out she had to move into a smaller apartment. She continued telling anyone who would listen that I was an ungrateful daughter, that I had abandoned her after everything she had done for me. But the ironic thing was, none of the people criticizing me actually stepped up to help her. They were quick to judge, but none of them ever extended the same support I once had. I no longer cared. I focused on my work, built my career, and enjoyed the life I had created for myself. I spent time with people who genuinely cared about me, people who didn't see me as an endless source of money. Sometimes, on quiet nights, I still thought about my mother. Not because I missed her, but because I missed the mother I had never had. The kind of mother who would love her daughter without expecting anything in return. But that person had never existed. I no longer waited for an apology. I no longer hoped that one day she would change. Maybe, one day, if she truly understood, I would reconsider. But one thing I knew for sure. I would never go back to being my family's ATM again. That chapter of my life was closed, and I had never felt freer. Jenna's story is not just a personal one. It reflects the reality of many people in the real world. Those who are exploited by their families under the guise of love and duty. It proves that true love cannot be measured in money and that no one is obligated to bear financial burdens simply because of blood relations. Jenna chose to set boundaries, protect herself, and build her own life without being controlled by manipulation. Sometimes, cutting ties is the only way to find peace and true freedom. What do you think about Jenna's story? Have you ever been in a similar situation or known someone who struggled to break free from family control? Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to follow the channel for more meaningful stories about family and life. My earliest memories were always filled with shouting. My father's voice echoed through our small house, making the walls tremble as if they were about to collapse. My mother always tried to stay calm, probably thinking about me and my younger brother, Caleb, but sometimes she couldn't hold it in. The arguments kept repeating, day after day, like an endless cycle. At that time, I was only 7, and Caleb was just 3. Too young to fully understand what was happening, but I knew. I saw the exhaustion etched on my mother's face every morning as she brushed my hair in front of the mirror. I saw her red-rimmed eyes after every argument, the deep sighs she tried to suppress while putting on a strong front for her children. I still remember that morning vividly when she softly sang an old lullaby while brushing Caleb's hair. I thought it was just another ordinary day, but that was the last time I saw her do that. That afternoon, my father's rage exploded louder than ever before. "Lisa, you always argue with me!" His voice roared, making Caleb flinch and burst into tears. "I just want to live my own life, Andrew," my mother fired back, her voice trembling but firm. "You control everything I do, everyone I talk to. I can't live like this anymore." Her final words echoed in the air, leaving behind a heavy silence that suffocated the entire house. I sat curled up on the staircase, clutching my brother's tiny hand, feeling like my world was about to collapse. After that day, everything changed too quickly. My mother vanished from our lives as if she had never existed. No goodbye, no final hug. My father told me she had abandoned us, that she didn't care about us, that she chose other things, wrong things, over being our mother. I was too young to understand everything, but old enough to feel the sting of betrayal. I believed him. I believed my mother had truly left me, that she no longer needed us. And then Sarah appeared. She was much younger than my mother, always radiant and full of energy. Sarah swiftly stepped into the role of my father's new wife, as if my mother had never been there. Caleb was immediately drawn to her. It didn't take long before he was calling her mom, clinging to her every chance he got. But I couldn't. Every time Sarah tried to brush my hair, I would flinch away. Every time she opened her arms for a hug, I stood still, refusing to respond. My father didn't like that. "Emily, you need to be grateful," he said sternly whenever I acted coldly. "Sarah is trying her best to be your mother. But how could I be grateful when I already had a mother? A real mother somewhere out there. A mother who disappeared without an explanation, without a single attempt to come back." Gradually, the distance between Caleb and me grew. Sarah adored my brother in ways I had never experienced. She bought him the finest clothes, took him to art classes and ice skating lessons. I was invited too, but I always refused. I didn't want to be part of their world. I didn't want to pretend everything was okay. Instead, I buried myself in books. I studied relentlessly because I knew education was my only escape from this house. As the years passed, Caleb became more and more attached to Sarah while I remained on the outside, a stranger in my own family. But I had a plan. I would study hard, earn a scholarship, and leave this place for good. My college years flew by at a dizzying pace. I worked tirelessly to ensure I wouldn't rely on anyone, juggling part-time jobs to support myself. Meanwhile, Caleb lived in the world Sarah had designed for him, a world of lavish parties, expensive clothes, and a carefree lifestyle. Finally, when I turned 18, I made it. I stood at the door of my college dorm, feeling, for the first time in my life, that I could truly breathe. This tiny room was mine. No father watching over my shoulder, no Sarah hovering nearby, no Caleb's curious eyes silently judging my refusal to integrate into their family. I was free. But even though I was far away, I still tried to keep in touch with Caleb. I couldn't abandon my brother, even though an invisible wall had already formed between us. One that neither of us knew how to break. And I never imagined that years later, this fragile connection would become the root of the greatest turmoil in my life. I still remember the first time I asked Caleb about his future plans. "What college are you applying to?" I asked during a short visit home. Caleb barely looked up from his phone, shrugging as if it didn't matter. "I'm not going to college," he said, his tone disturbingly casual. I froze. "Not going? But you always said you wanted to study design." "I don't need to anymore." Caleb chuckled, as if I had said something ridiculous. "Sarah introduced me to Rachel. You remember Rachel, right? She's the only daughter of the Harper family. You know, the investment real estate empire. They're insanely rich, Emily, and Rachel is completely obsessed with me." I didn't know what shocked me more, Caleb completely giving up on his dreams or the way he talked about his life as if it were just part of a predetermined plan. "So, you're going to marry her?" I asked, still unable to believe it. "Yeah, probably," he smirked. "Sarah says it's a smart choice. The Harper family will take care of me for life. What's there to worry about?" "What's there to worry about?" I looked at my brother, the boy who once had big dreams, now only concerned with someone else's wealth as a shortcut to an easy life. "So, you don't want a career of your own? You don't want to build something for yourself?" "Not everyone is like you, Emily." Caleb shrugged and turned back to his phone. "Not everyone wants to work themselves to exhaustion just to survive." I didn't know what to say anymore. Caleb had completely become the person Sarah wanted him to be. Someone who lived off others, seeing life as a series of privileges he was entitled to. Caleb's wedding took place a year later, so extravagant that I felt like a stranger among the wealthy guests I didn't even know. Sarah handled everything, from Rachel's wedding dress to the dinner menu. My father stood there, beaming with pride at the son he had always favored. And me? I was just an outsider in my own family. In the months that followed, I focused on my own life. I landed a remote accounting job with a decent salary, enough to rent a small apartment in the city. I thought I could finally build a life without my family's interference. But Caleb had other ideas. At first, he dropped by occasionally, always bringing stories of his glamorous new life. But soon, those visits started including something else. One day, Caleb showed up at my door with a baby carrier and a large bag. "Emily, can you watch Matthew for a bit? Rachel has a charity gala tonight and I have an important meeting." I blinked at the tiny baby, barely a year old, sleeping soundly in the carrier. "Caleb, you couldn't give me a heads up?" "It's just this once," he said, setting the carrier down and leaving before I could protest. But it wasn't just this once. The visits became more frequent, and soon I had become an unpaid babysitter. Caleb and Rachel always had reasons: an important dinner, an unexpected trip, an event they couldn't miss. And then, one time, Caleb left Matthew with me for 3 days, without any warning. My job started to suffer. Video meetings were constantly interrupted by crying, spreadsheets left unfinished because I had to change diapers. I was exhausted, but Caleb didn't care. The breaking point came on a Tuesday morning. I was working when Matthew fell off a chair while reaching for a toy. He screamed, and when I picked him up, I saw a bruise forming on his small arm. When Caleb came to pick him up, I barely had a chance to explain before he exploded. "What the hell, Emily?" he shouted. "You can't even watch a child properly?" "Caleb, this wasn't my fault. He just had a minor fall." I tried to stay calm. "Not your fault?" His eyes burned with anger. "You're always so busy with your stupid job. You should have been watching him instead of your worthless spreadsheets." I felt my own anger boil over. "I have a job, Caleb. I can't just drop everything to babysit whenever you feel like it." "And you still call yourself my sister?" he spat. "I trusted you with my child, and you let him get hurt." I looked at my brother, the one I had once tried to protect, now standing in front of me, blaming me for not sacrificing my life for him. "Get out of my house," I said, my voice colder than ever. Caleb stared at me as if he couldn't believe what he had just heard. "Are you serious?" "Completely." I opened the door. "From now on, if you need a babysitter, hire one." Caleb shot me a furious glare, picked up Matthew and stormed out, slamming the door behind him. I stood there, my heart pounding in my chest, but no matter what, I knew I had done the right thing. For the first time in my life, I put myself first. I thought that after that, Caleb would understand that I was no longer someone he could order around, but I had overestimated my brother's sense of reasoning. A week later, I received a message from my father. "Emily, the whole family is going to Colorado for a ski trip this Christmas. You'll watch Matthew for Caleb during that time. The trip will last a week." No request, no inquiry, just a clear command, as if it was something I was obligated to do. I put my phone down, took a deep breath, and replied, "I already have plans to go on vacation with my friends. I can't watch Matthew." The next message came almost immediately. "Emily, don't be selfish. This is your family." "We put family first." I scoffed. If family is so important, then why didn't anyone ask if I was available before making this decision for me? No response for hours. I thought that was the end of it. But by the evening, Caleb called. "You're joking, right?" His voice was sharp the moment I answered. "Why would I be joking?" I asked, keeping my tone calm. "You're really not going to watch Matthew? Rachel and I already made plans. We can't take him with us." "Then hire a babysitter," I replied. "You can more than afford to pay for a professional." "Are you just trying to make things difficult for me?" Caleb snapped. "You're always like this, always thinking you're better than everyone else. But really, you're just a heartless—" I hung up before he could finish. Less than 30 minutes later, my father called. I looked at the screen, feeling a headache coming on. I wasn't planning on answering, but then I thought, maybe this was the moment to put an end to everything. I pressed accept. "Emily, what do you think you're doing?" His voice was firm, but I could hear the frustration in every word. "I've already made myself clear," I replied. "I'm not watching Matthew. You're disappointing the family. You should be grateful for everything Sarah and I have done for you. We've cared for you your entire life, and now you're turning your back on us?" I let out a dry laugh. "You cared for me? Or did you just want me to do everything you expected?" "You should think carefully, Emily," he said, his tone dropping lower. "If you continue this way, don't expect anything from this family anymore." I knew exactly what he meant. "You mean the inheritance?" I asked, my voice turning cold. "You're going to leave everything to Caleb, aren't you?" Silence. I laughed. "Then go ahead, Dad. I don't care. You'll regret this." "I won't." I hung up. I sat quietly in my apartment, staring out at the night sky. I used to think that, no matter what, Caleb was still my brother. But now I realized I had no reason to hold on to a relationship that only existed for others' benefit. I was free. 3 days later, I left the city with my friends, heading to a mountain resort. For the first time in years, I felt like I could truly enjoy life without looking back. And then, the message came. "Your mother wants to connect with you." The name on my screen made me freeze. Lisa Mitchell. I stared at the notification for a long time, my heart pounding. I hadn't thought about my mother in years. Or rather, I had forced myself not to think about her. I had convinced myself that she no longer existed in my life. But now, she was reaching out. Finally, I tap on the message. "Emily, I saw your father's post. I know this may be a shock, but I truly want to talk to you. I've been waiting for this opportunity for so long. If you're willing, please meet me." I didn't know how to respond. I had grown up believing that my mother didn't care about me, that she left without ever looking back. But now, I wasn't so sure anymore. I texted back, "We can meet." I chose a quiet cafe to meet her. As soon as I walked in, I recognized her instantly. Still the same eyes, still the same petite frame. When she saw me, tears shimmered in her eyes. "Emily," she said, her voice trembling. I sat down across from her. "I want to know the truth," I said. She nodded. And then she told me everything. My father had done everything in his power to keep her away from us. He sent her pictures of Caleb and me with Sarah, telling her that we had a new family and didn't need her anymore. He even made up stories claiming that Caleb and I didn't want to see her. But the worst part? My mother had never actually abandoned us. "All the money I sent you since you turned 18, you never received it?" she asked. I shook my head. My father had lied. He kept every penny she had sent me and never told me about it. I felt like I had been deceived my entire life. That night, I made a post on social media. For years, I believed my mother abandoned me. But today, I learned the truth. My father kept her out of my life. He lied to me, kept the money she sent for me, and made me believe she didn't love me. The post exploded. Friends, relatives, even people who had once known my family shared it. I received a message from my father. "Emily, you don't understand what's happening. Let me explain." I didn't read it. I blocked his number. Then I blocked Caleb. I didn't know anyone anything anymore. I had found my mother, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel alone. I moved into a small apartment not far from my mother's home, a quiet place where I could finally start over. After years of feeling controlled and used, I could finally breathe freely without looking back. In the peaceful evenings, I often visited my mother, helping her prepare dinner or simply sitting by her side, listening to stories about my childhood that I had never known. Each time, I felt a little lighter, as if I were slowly piecing together the memories that had been stolen from me for so many years. One day, while sorting through a few boxes left from my move, my mother suddenly asked, "Do you think you'll ever reach out to Caleb again?" I set my book down and looked at her for a long moment. "I don't know," I sighed. "Maybe one day, if he learns to think for himself. But I'm not holding my breath." She didn't say anything else, just nodded gently. She understood. She knew how much Caleb had been influenced by my father and Sarah, and perhaps, just as I had once been manipulated by their lies, my brother needed to realize the truth for himself. But I no longer wanted to wait or hope for something that even he didn't want to change. Now I had a new life, a life I had chosen for myself. And more importantly, I had found my real family. A family not built on obligation or control, but on love, respect, and truth. Life doesn't always give us a perfect family, but we always have the right to choose the people who truly deserve to be called family. Emily spent her childhood seeking approval from those who only wanted to control her, but in the end, she realized that true family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by honesty and genuine care. Sometimes, in life, we have to walk away from toxic relationships to truly find ourselves, and when we are strong enough to do that, true freedom begins. What do you think about Emily's story? If you were in her position, what would you do? Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to follow the channel for more thought-provoking stories about family, life, and the choices that shape us.